All right, so it's going to come with an instruction manual, so turning on the remote and turning on the actual receiver, the part that goes on the dog, you can read about those pieces. I won't spend a ton of time on that. This collar and any e-collar that I'm going to use, the kind of the features that I'm looking for are that it has momentary and continuous stimulation. So momentary for this collar is this top button here. No matter how long I hold it down, I have a little tone box hooked up, so you'll be able to tell whenever there's noise coming out of that, that means stimulation would be getting applied to the dog.
Got it.
Okay, so
Don't forget that you're actually.
well, so it lets me know your timing, right? And it lets you know my timing, so you get it's easier for people to learn this that way, right? So if I hold down continuous, doesn't matter how long I hold it down, it's just a tap, right? If I hold down continuous, right, he's going to feel it for an extended period of time. So for us, the way that we use the e-collar is if I am trying to get the dog to engage in a behavior that requires a bunch of movement, then I'm usually going to use Nix. So like if we're sending him to kennel, which is the first exercise we're going to do, I would say kennel, and then I'm going to tap at a very even cadence until he completes that action. So I would say kennel. And then as soon as he's done, all 4 feet are up on top of that training table, then that's when we would stop applying pressure. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's how we're going to use this for every one of these behaviors. We're going to use momentary for pretty much all of those things. There are times when we use continuous for certain stuff. It's not really early on here, right? So for the most part, that's how we're going to use it. So you only need to worry about this one black button here, and then you don't have to worry about anything else. Okay, it's the one that has an S on it, right? This one over here that has a T, that's tone or vibrate. It's again something that we're not going to use a ton in the way that we train, right? So there's use cases for it, but we're not going to use it very much. Okay, so I want you to hang on to this. I want you to touch these 2 metal contact points to your hand.
Done this already. We were drunk at Kevin's house. We put it on our neck because they had one.
So I'm going to turn it up little by little, right? We're going to find the level. We're going to do this with the dog too. The difference between the dog and you is I can ask you if you feel it, and I can't ask him. So I'm going to keep tapping the button, and I'm kind of asking him a question. And when I see like a little head turn or like, huh, that's weird, right? Then I'll know that he feels it. So tell me when you feel it.
Yeah, feel a little bit.
Okay, so that's at a 23. Most dogs feel that. So this goes up to 100,
Oh.
right? So is that like painful at the?
No, I
at
just
that level?
I'm probably the worst person to ask because this just feels like the stim machine I used to always put on my back.
Okay, yeah. So it's kind of similar, right? So most dogs are going to feel this at about half that level, maybe even lower than that, right? So to start with, that's what we're looking at. When we talk about the levels that we're going to use for the dog, when I'm teaching stuff, I'm concerned with finding a level that I know he feels. At a certain point, I need to make sure that I'm using a level that I know motivates him to do what I'm asking him to do. And they may not be the same thing. They may be the same thing, right? So when we're working through this stuff, I'm going to constantly be messing with this dial, and I don't want you to pay a lot of attention to the number that shows up there. It doesn't mean anything. It's like an arbitrary scale. Like, yes, 9 is lower than 10, right? But it doesn't mean anything, so I don't want you to get like married to a number. And what you're going to find is like maybe he works at a 10 in here, and then if you go try to do this work at a park, he might be double that level, at least to start, right? And then maybe for a while, it's like it looks like he barely feels 20. And then once he calms down some, then 20 seems to be way too much for him. So you're gonna have to be playing with this dial, turning up and down, and just adjust as you go. Don't freak out if it seems like he doesn't feel it. Don't freak out if it seems like it's too much. Just adjust.
I guess too much would seem like kind of like rear back or.
Yeah, so, and again, these are gonna be wide ranges. So there's kind of like not enough, too much, and the right amount, right? It's like Goldilocks kind of, right? So not enough would be, maybe he even feels it, but he's not trying to do anything about it, right? He's just ignoring it. Too much might be, you see him doing like the Night at the Roxbury, like head nod thing, or he's vocalizing, right? So he's like, he's crying, right? Now even that, we gotta keep in context with different dogs. Like my dog Anya, like if I pick up her foot to like do her nails sometimes, she'll be like, I don't want it, right? So like, some dogs are vocal over nothing, right? So you just gotta know your dog when you're working on this stuff. So he doesn't seem to be particularly vocal, so if he's vocalizing when you're working on this stuff with him, your collar's probably pretty hot, right? So we would probably wanna turn it down. But you usually have a relatively large range there, so like you could probably go up or down 3 to 5 levels, and the dog probably still feels it, and so like that might be your range is like, you know, somewhere between 5 and 10 levels is reasonable, right? But again, I sometimes I worry about sharing too much detail because people like they get tied to what I say, and it's like I don't want there to be that much focus on the level that you're using on the collar. You're going to see efficiency in his movement when it's the right level is really kind of the real criteria, right? So when we put this on him, it needs to be tight enough that if I tried to rotate that collar box around his neck, it doesn't slide. And the reason for that, so let's hold it to your hand again, and let's find a level that you feel. Do you feel that?
A little bit.
Okay, now I want you to move it just like a centimeter on your hand.
Yeah, I feel that way more.
Right. So what happens is, like where your nerves sit and stuff are in certain spots, and so your collar, when you put it on, you're never going to put it on the exact same spot twice. So we just need to make sure that when we put it on, we kind of mess with this level and find the level that seems to be working good for him to start out our session. But then if the collar moves, then he may not feel it anymore, or it may become way too intense. So the collar moving or change in distraction are going to be the things that would cause him to not feel the stimulation or to feel it too much, right? Like if I'm very distracted and then it gets very calm, then maybe the level I was using that was working is now too high, right? If the collar was here and then it moved higher or lower, then it could go either way, right? Depending on how it goes. So when we place this on the dog, this collar box can be anywhere from here, around the back of the neck, to here. I don't want it over like the breathy, swallowy parts, right? So like where your Adam's apple would be, I don't want the collar over that. I want it on the side. If I'm having trouble with a dog, kind of being able to tell if they feel the collar or not, then I'll usually stick it like on the neck muscle that runs kind of just behind their ear, because then I will get muscle contraction similar to the tool you were talking about, right? Because then I will get the head nod, and then I know for sure he feels it. He might not hate it, right? It might not be freaking him out, but I know that he feels it, because how can you not feel your whole head moving, right? You understand what I'm saying? So when we put this on him, I want it to be high up on the neck, so it should be just under the jaw and right behind the ears. If we're using e-collar, then e-collar is the thing that we're using to force the dog to do stuff. So if I have to force the dog with a prong collar also, then I should just turn my e-collar up so that it matters enough. And then if I turn my e-collar up and he's still not responding correctly, he's confused. He's not being stubborn, right? So I need to teach better instead of just piling on more and more force. In this session, minimally, we're gonna cover go and come, because I want very quickly for the dog to I don't want him to get too tied to one behavior. Like he feels the stimulation, he's like, that means jump on a table. I don't want that to be what he learns. So as soon as we start getting some success with the send away, we're immediately gonna work on recall, right? And so if he was a sticky dog, those dogs, I would definitely work on pushing away from me first, just because practically speaking, they're already gonna be near me. So that's what I have to do. If I have a dog that likes to hang out away from me, I'm not very relevant to them, then I might do recall first, because moving towards me might be the primary thing that I want to work on, because my dog is already very outwardly focused on stuff. He's pretty well balanced, right? So we kind of do it any way that we want to do it. I just, you guys have a relatively high level of commitment, right? You did puppy stuff, now you're doing adult stuff, right? So you've been around for a while, so I'm choosing to do the send away stuff first because I'm just gonna assume that you're gonna keep doing training, and then all the advanced stuff that we do is the dog being out there doing stuff like independent from us, but for us, right? So getting him used to being pushed away will just help you if you're gonna do advanced training.